Welcome. My name's Kaivalya, and today we're going to go into a exploration of the five elements as understood through Chinese medicine. My background is in Chinese medicine. I have a master's in acupuncture with a specialization in Chinese herbs. And I've been practicing for several years and really find that this understanding enhances life. Because when we understand the fractal nature of the universe, we're able to harmonize with universe and nature. So Alan Watts says the way the world actually is an enormously complex, interrelated orbit. And the Tao Te Ching, which this is a Taoist understanding, the Tao gives birth to one gives birth to two gives birth to three, and three gives birth to all universal things. All universal things are sustained by the yin and activated by the yang. They mingle and interact with each other, they mix and they harmonize to create this infinite fractal of possibilities. And the five elements in various combination generate the 10,000 things. They are wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. And this is the map that we'll use to understand more deeply how these five elements, the wuxing, is also translated as the five phases because they interact in a way to balance each other out. And the way that they find balance is by moving through these different phases. This map is a great way of understanding this and has been used. It matured in the first to second BCE era in the Han Dynasty. So this is the Shen cycle. And this is the generating cycle where each of the elements nourishes and sustains the next. So wood builds a fire. Fire turns into ash, turns into earth. Earth under heat and pressure turns into metal. Tricky one is where metal turns into water. And I had an insight about this one I'm excited about. It happened when I was walking my dog, as insights sometimes do, just in random spaces and moments. But magma in the earth, which is mostly iron and metal, when it comes up, it actually releases hydrogen and oxygen into our atmosphere, which is the only new water that comes into the water cycle on the earth, on the surface. So that metal of magma coming up brings us new water. So that's how I understand how metal turns into water. And then water, of course, nourishes wood through, we have to water the trees, we have to water, water the trees. So you can see how these things generate each other. And once we get into some of the other correlations, we can apply this to how our organs are interrelated, how our emotions are interrelated, like one emotion will feed into the next one, and a whole array of things. So I'll just give a couple examples. So fire is associated with joy, and earth is associated with worry. So sometimes we can get like so joyful and happy that we're like worried it's going to end. And so here's the controlling cycle. And in the controlling cycle, so this is like if there's too much fire, you use water to put it out. And you can use fire to melt metal. And you can use metal like an axe to chop wood. And wood holds the earth, and the earth holds the banks of the water. And then when the elements counteract on each other, it's the opposite of the generating cycle. They go back. This is when they're in excess or deficiency. So it'd be like earth is insulting. This is like the insulting. It's going back, and the earth is, not allowing the fires, or the fire isn't burning down the entire forest, or the wood is sucking up all the water. And this is also an insulting cycle where the grandmother element, so we have like the mother element, wood is the mother to fire. Well, water is the grandmother to fire. So this one's like, the fire is now taking over the water. It's taking over the water. So there's thousands of correlations in all of these elements. And they're infinite, really. We'll go over some like body, facial expression, emotions, and things, but there's also smells, odors, tastes, and colors. And so the color of fire is red, earth is yellow, metal is white, water is black or blue, and wood is green. And with all of these, we can use this understanding in like Neigong inner work. We can breathe in these colors into their associated organs to help the organs find balance. And the organs associated with each of these elements. So fire actually has four, and one's a little bit, well, two of them are a little bit different than like our Western understanding of organs, but very important. And so the first two are heart and small intestine. The next two are the Sanjiao, which is like the triple burner, triple energizer. There's a few other translations. And then also the pericardium, which is like the muscle that's holding the heart, the heart sac. Earth is stomach and spleen, metal is lung and large intestine, water is kidney and bladder, and wood is liver and gallbladder. So these organ associations are used in meridian therapies like Japanese acupuncture and in the Zhongfu treatments and Chinese acupuncture. And there are specific styles that are just five element styles. And even the points will have these different elements associated with them in the antique points. And if that interests you, maybe you ought to study some Chinese medicine because it's amazing that this ancient practice has survived for so many millennia. And the reason that it has is because it works. It is applicable and it is an empirical science. It has been studied through witnessing nature and understanding the relationship that these elements have in this fractal universe. So another layer of this is taste, and you can use taste to balance your organs. So with fire is like scorched taste. Earth is sweet. Metal is pungent. Water is bland, like water doesn't really have a taste, right? And wood is bitter. And in the generation cycle, if you're thinking of that cycle going around clockwise in the circle, you can use bitter to tonify fire. So you can use that wood element to build. So bitter herbs actually can be really good for the heart. And so you can use that and think about that more yourself. And here we'll go into the body types. So I just used a picture. Like I said, it's all relative. So in this picture, relatively, the most water person is this woman on the left. She has big round eyes. She has a round face. Water people, you can imagine like a drop of water. They can be a little bit softer in their skin. They don't have like the defined muscle tone if you look over at the earth person that they have. And so they're a little bit, softer in nature. Whereas let's just go to this earth person. You can see he has his shoulders and his hips. They're square out to each other. Now he has a little bit of angle. So like I said, this is most relative to this picture, but that kind of angularness is kind of a fire quality. So when we have like broad shoulders to a narrow waist, that's more of a fire thing. But he has this strong muscular structure and broad shoulders, which is an earth quality. He also has a rather square face. It could be how his hairline's trimmed that I'm seeing that very clearly, but also just that squareness of earth, like earth element, like the platonic solids. And so let's go back over to the left to metal. Metal, we talked about the color being white. And so these people, just like in their skin, they have that brightness that comes out. So you can see the colors kind of coming out in people's skin. So in water, blue and black, it could be her clothing a little bit, but you can see around her eyes, there are some blue hues coming out. And around his eyes, there's some white in his eyes under here, in his hands. Metal also, we'll get into the hands later, but these kind of meticulous kind of type of people, and they can be rather like thin, but not as thin and what we call like sinewy. It's I have not found a better word for this. And please don't be offended, but like lanky would be like the wood type, is the sinewy type, because sinews are the tissue association also with wood. And so they have slender, like this woman that is the most wood here, she has slenderness to her. You can also almost see her connective tissues around her elbows. They're really almost prominent there. And we'll see that more in the hands and stuff too. But she's slender and she kind of has this greenish hue. You can almost see like under her eyes. Maybe if you put a piece of green paper behind her face, it might bring out a little bit of the greens in her skin. Whereas this man, this earth man, if you put a piece of yellow behind him, you might see more of that yellow in his cheeks and nose that's coming out of his skin. And then this fire type, fire can also be like, so earth and water tend to be the more round. Earth tends to be kind of the voluptuous type, but also shoulders and hips are the same width, where fire is like angular. So she has kind of like the wood, but the angular jaw. And the wood face that I chose here, she might have actually more of a fire angle to her jaw. Like I said, it's relative in this picture, but this fire over on the side, she is very um like you can almost see in her that she has a little bit more rosiness around the edges of her cheeks here and in her underneath her nose and underneath the eyebrows up here. So a little more of that red hue to her skin. So again, it's all relative and we can kind of find the predominant element in people. Everybody has all five. And so through this understanding, we can kind of pick people's constitution and then understand what their greatest weakness and their greatest strengths are. And so here's the facial stuff. I think this is really helpful because you can kind of get a sense of the faces a little bit better. And again, it's relative. So we'll start on the left. You can see earth has the boxiness. Metal is angular, but also like has that brightness, that whiteness to their complexion. Their skin doesn't have to be white to show that white. The fire type, you can see the angle in the jaw and the point in the nose, smaller eyes than water, where water's more round, has rounder eyes. Again, another earth type. And as you look through this, maybe just look at all the metal types and look at all the earth types and look at all the fire types and just get a sense so you can start to kind of program your mind to see these things. So our metal woman, again, kind of angular, you can see that similarity. And then there we go. The earth again, square angles to the sides of his face. It's not turning in, it's kind of boxy in a way. He does have an angle to his jaw, a little bit of maybe fire in his constitution. And then this woman with the wood type, you can see the the kind of sinewiness in her collarbone here. She's also slender. Earth, again, a little more boxy and round. Metal, you can sense, are you getting a sense of this kind of way of seeing? It's kind of like you're training your mind to see in a different way. And now we have metal here that is not necessarily a white skin type, and you can yet see the kind of white coming through, that brightness coming through, but also it's not so much about color of skin. This goes beyond that kind of judgment. It's more about this fractal, like we're talking about the fractal nature of the universe. So we can see this kind of metal type. Do you see how this metal type is similar to the other metal types in the facial structure? And then this fire type, how is she similar to all the fire types before this? And kind of get a sense of that with the angular jaw. And even like the way that people smile, it can be a little bit different from type to type. We have another earth here. Again, you can see that square in their face. The water, see how that's a little more round in the facial structure, and she's got rounder eyes, a little more like big in her eyes there. And then another metal type, which has smaller eyes. So yeah, these are just, layers of understanding these fractals. And Next, we'll go into the hands. So this is again relative, just based off of this image. And we can see that the water hand, it's a little puffier, right? It's a little more full of water. The wood hand, it's like branches. These are long, slender fingers. Metal, we have the color, obviously, that's like the most bright white in this picture, but it's also their delicate hands. You can tell maybe by that fingernail there, these are delicate hands. These are hands like metal people are very intellectual, and they're not really like earth type, where we go over to these next two earth hands, which are people that have worked with their hands all their lives. They've tilled the fields, they have bigger knuckles, they're strong in their hands. Then we have the fire, which is kind of in between in my understanding of like earth, which makes sense because fire, but it's in between the earth and the metal. So here we have the emotions, and we'll get into this for a couple minutes. So we have earth. This is set up so that you get the idea of like emotions are not necessarily like good or bad, but we have like upward spiral emotions and the downward spiral emotions here. So earth is like nurturing, and the voice of an earth person is like sing-songy, and so and this, remember, the flavor is sweet. So the emotion of earth is this kind of tender care, like nurturing Mother Earth. The other side of that is worry, excessive worry, pensiveness. Um, it gets into the organs a little bit, why that matters. But it's the spleen and stomach. So it's about digestion, it's about receiving nourishment. And then sometimes, I don't know if you've experienced this, but if you get worried, you can feel it in your stomach. So metal's next. Metal is decisive. It's clear thinking. It's very organized in the mental component. And the other side of that is grief. It's just the grief of loss, the grief of just the world at large. And metal types can get really stuck in grief. And this is the organs of the lung and the large intestine. So the lung, when we cry, we can like heave really hard, and the large intestine is all about letting go of what our body doesn't need. And so those are the emotions for metal. For water, like water's flowing, right? So water can be very creative type. It can also be really fearful. And I think these two really play into each other a lot, because sometimes we have a fear of creating something that's not perfect, and that can block creativity. So you can really see that dynamic in the water type personality. Wood is like, I love these two words, I think really fit wood element, but it's like benevolence or belligerence. And so, like, wood wants to expand, it wants to grow. It's like, the trees that's reaching out. And if the branches, like our metaphysical branches, we can't expand, there can be like anger and frustration that occur. And it can turn into, there's a whole spectrum, there's a whole spiral here. But it can be, as extreme as belligerence, and as, beautiful as benevolence. And fire is like that joy, that spark. I think we've all used the term like, wow, they have a fiery personality. Like, it's almost like there is this underlying sense of these elemental emotional types. And, fire, so its high side is like joy and expression. And then its low side can be that kind of like, I'm going to burn the house down. you know? So that kind of intensity of and it can also be mania. So mania can also be that other side. It's like joy overexpressed into mania. If you would like to learn more about how to harmonize and balance and the elements within your body and your own elemental archetype, you can reach out, visit my website, enchantedmedicine.com. I am offering a fall cleanse to help people transition into this next season as Yang descends and Yin emerges. And we're moving into this season with balance and harmony in our bodies, minds, and spirit. And thank you for listening. I hope this was helpful to you and have a beautiful life.